What if the reason your life isn't flowing isn't because you're doing too little, but because you're trying too hard? What if your obsession with control, achievement, and validation is the very thing blocking you from becoming who you're meant to be? There's a strange kind of suffering that lives in the soul of modern people, a silent exhaustion, like running uphill in a dream, always chasing, never arriving. Could it be that the real answer lies not in doing more, but in letting go? Before we dive in, if you've ever felt trapped in your own mind, stuck in patterns you can't explain, or if you've ever asked yourself, why does nothing ever seem to work for me? Then this video is for you. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment below, and share this with someone who's caught in the storm. You might just become the mirror that reflects their awakening. Because today, we're not just talking about self-help. We're talking about existential freedom. Michel de Montaigne, Renaissance thinker, master of introspection, and quiet rebel of the soul, understood something most of us forget, that peace doesn't come from conquering the world, but from surrendering the war inside us. What Montaigne whispers through time is a radical idea: when you stop caring so damn much, things begin to work. Not because you're passive, but because you're finally in tune. No longer possessed by your unconscious need to control, perform, prove. You're no longer trapped in the shadow. We'll weave Montaigne's insights with the wisdom of Jung, Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, Gabor Maté, and Viktor Frankl, thinkers who all recognize the same truth in different languages, that your suffering often comes from the meaning you give it, and that freedom begins when you start to see clearly. This is not about giving up. It's about waking up. So ask yourself, what if everything you've been chasing is actually running from you because you're holding on too tight? Stick around. The moment of recognition is coming. Why do we sabotage exactly what we claim to want the most? Why do we run from the silence, the stillness, the mirror? The truth is uncomfortable. Deep down, we're terrified of what success, love, or inner peace might demand of us. Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. We chase external goals, not because we want them in themselves, but because they keep us distracted from the confrontation with the void, that haunting feeling that maybe we don't know who we are without the noise. There's a war within us, a civil war between the part that longs for expansion, and the part that fears the responsibility that comes with it. Nietzsche called this inner conflict the human, all too human, condition, the tug-of-war between our will to power and our instinct to remain in familiar suffering. We dream of freedom, but find comfort in our chains. We seek meaning, but recoil when life asks us to truly engage. We build cages out of control, anxiety, perfectionism, just to avoid facing the wild, uncertain part of ourselves. And that's where Michel de Montaigne enters like a quiet storm. He didn't shout answers. He observed. He questioned. He let life reveal its wisdom through reflection rather than force. For Montaigne, the answer was not to master life, but to befriend it. He realized that trying to control everything, our image, our emotions, our outcomes, was a form of spiritual arrogance. It was only when he began to relax into uncertainty that life began to open. He was, in many ways, one of the first to expose the unconscious patterns of performance and fear that dominate us even today. These invisible scripts, the need to be the best, the fear of rejection, the belief that we're only worthy if we produce or please, they aren't really ours. They were planted long ago, by family, culture, trauma, history. But unless we bring them to light, they control us from the shadows. As Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The point isn't to get rid of the shadow. The point is to recognize it, and in that recognition, reclaim your power. Because sometimes, the deepest kind of transformation doesn't come from striving, but from finally, honestly, stopping. Look closely. What are you really running from? Is it failure, or the weight of finally succeeding? Is it the fear of rejection, or the fear of being truly seen, without filters, without roles, without performance. We hide behind anxiety, behind constant busyness, behind perfectionism. But what if all of that is just a distraction? What if your addictions, your recurring setbacks, your obsession with control, are simply ways to avoid facing what's buried deep inside? The real problem isn't out there, it's in here. In the hidden architecture of your psyche. In the emotional wounds you've normalized. In the strategies you developed as a child to survive, to be accepted, to feel safe. As Dr. Gabor Maté says, addictions don't begin with pleasure, they begin with pain. And that pain often comes from being forced to become someone you never truly were, just to be loved. So you learn to suppress. To perform. To please. But now, that same mask is suffocating you. You say you want to be free, but are you ready to face what freedom actually demands? Because it's not more achievement, not more control. It's presence. It's honesty. It's the courage to sit in the silence without trying to escape. Carl Jung called this, the shadow, the parts of yourself you exile, reject, or deny. But those parts never leave. They simply act out through your choices, your relationships, your emotions. They whisper in the background until you finally have the courage to turn around and face them. This confrontation with yourself is not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. But it requires one radical move, to stop outsourcing your worth. To stop chasing validation and start recognizing the patterns that have defined your life without your awareness. As Jung famously said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is not about blame. It's about responsibility, the sacred kind. The kind that says, if I created this story, I can rewrite it. So ask yourself, what story have I been telling myself, and who gave me the pen in the first place? If you can sit with that question, not run from it, not rush to answer it, you might just find that clarity was never far away. It was simply buried beneath years of noise, fear, and trying too hard to be someone you were never meant to be. True transformation never comes from a quick fix, a viral quote, or a perfect morning routine. It begins in the quiet, often painful moment when you decide to stop looking outward for answers, and finally turn inward. The turning point is not a dramatic event. It's a subtle shift, a willingness to see yourself clearly, even when it hurts. It's realizing that healing doesn't mean erasing the pain, it means making space for it, listening to it, understanding what it came to protect. When you stop blaming the world and start asking, what is this situation trying to teach me about myself? That's where power is born. Not power over others, but power over your own patterns. Over your inherited beliefs. Over your automatic reactions. As Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose. And in that choice, we begin to rewrite the story we've been unconsciously living. The shadow doesn't disappear when you ignore it, it only grows stronger. But when you bring awareness to it, when you face it with courage instead of shame, something shifts. You begin to see that your fears, your defenses, even your self-sabotage, they all came from a place of protection. A place that, at one point, kept you alive. And instead of rejecting those parts, you start to hold them with compassion. You stop trying to fix yourself and start understanding yourself. This isn't a magical process. There are no shortcuts. Some days will feel like you're going backwards. But every time you choose to stay with yourself, rather than abandon yourself, you heal a little more. You build a quiet resilience, the kind that doesn't scream, but breathes. The kind that says, I don't have to be perfect to be whole. You realize that freedom was never about escaping the pain. It was about learning how to carry it with grace. And slowly, life starts to respond differently. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You're no longer reacting from fear, you're responding from awareness. You're no longer chasing love, you're becoming it. The point of no return is not when you change everything. It's when you stop abandoning yourself. And from that place, everything begins to fall into place. Maybe the real journey isn't about becoming someone else, but about remembering who you were before the fear, before the noise, before the world told you who to be. There's no final answer, no perfect mindset to reach. Just presence. Just the humble and courageous act of observing yourself, moment by moment, with honesty and kindness. The question isn't, am I healed, but rather, am I listening? So today, let this be your quiet challenge, watch yourself. Watch how you react when you're criticized. Notice the tension when things don't go your way. Pay attention to the craving for approval, the impulse to distract, the fear behind your control. Don't judge it. Just see it. Because awareness, raw, unfiltered awareness, is the seed of transformation. Not tomorrow. Not someday. But now. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to like, comment, and share this video with someone who might need it. Let's build a space where depth is welcome, where we don't rush to fix each other, but instead, learn to sit with truth. And most of all, don't just watch this video, live it. Let today be the first day you stop abandoning yourself. If this content spoke to you, watch the video that's about to appear on your screen. It might be exactly what your soul needed to hear today.